Hello and welcome to the Naked Expat channel. Today is quite an important date for the Philippines, the 1st of September 2025, because as of about 55 minutes ago, the new Philippine Retirement Authority, the PRA, regulations went live with regards to the SRRV, the Special Retirement Visa scheme. And what I wanted to wait for until today, and I'm glad I did, is confirmation with regards to the fees specifically for the Courtesy Visa. Now, the Courtesy Visa is available to ex-Filipinos, and this is very important for guys that are perhaps married to a Filipino and living in America, but their intention is to come to the Philippines to retire and to enjoy their latter years. It's very, very common to do that. And there's a lot of guys in America that are married to Filipinos. And there are some guys in Europe and the UK and in Australia as well. And this is also very, very important because in most instances, when the Filipina acquires citizenship in a foreign country, she loses her Philippine citizenship. So when you come back to the Philippines to retire, you have two options. You have the option, which is standard for most people to do, their gut instinct, because you're married to a Filipina, is to essentially go onto the 13A spouses visa. But there's two problems with that. The first one, if your relationship breaks down and you become legally separated or divorced, because as a foreigner, I know myself, you can get divorced back in your home country, and that under the Geneva Convention needs to be recognized in the Philippines, and your marriage can essentially be annotated in the Philippines as you're divorced. And when that happens, your 13A visa immediately ceases. Likewise, a terrible situation, you're elderly and you're in love with your Filipina and you're retired happily in the Philippines and she dies before you. Now, on the date of her death, you immediately become a tourist again. And that 13A visa is void because on death or lack of the sponsorship from your wife, you're immediately on a tourist visa again. Now, during that grieving process, you either because you're on a tourist visa, get that tourist visa extended and go on to an SRRV retirement visa or leave the country. Or just keep on renewing it, etc. for a period of time. But when you go onto perhaps a retirement visa, you've got no spouse or anything else. So you'll be going on to either the SRRV Classic, which is going to cost you a deposit of 15 or 30,000 US dollars now, or you're going to be going on to, if you happen to be retired military, you're going on to the SRRV Extended Courtesy, which is going to cost you a deposit of 3,000 if you've got pension, lifetime pension, or 6,000 deposit if you haven't got lifetime pension. Or you're going to have to go on to Classic if you happen to be under the age of 50, you're going to be putting in a deposit of 50,000, which is, during the process of grieving and you've lost your wife. So that's not ideal, and it doesn't offer any long-term security whatsoever. Your best option really is for both of you to retire to the Philippines and for the former Filipino to apply under the Filipino Courtesy SRRV visa scheme, which includes you at no extra charge. And also, very importantly, it doesn't die when she dies. I'll quickly cover this because most of you guys are not aware of this, and this is extremely valuable content, guys. So do listen up on this. If you're married to a Filipino and she's got US citizenship, for example, and then you want to come and retire to the Philippines. Now, this is what happens under the new regime. Let's assume that your Filipino spouse, you're happily living in America, you want to come over to the Philippines to retire. If she's over the age of 50, it doesn't matter about your age, but if she's over the age of 50, then the amount of security deposit that you have to pay into the SRRV system is $1,500. There's also a processing fee, which is also $1,500, which is 3,000 US dollars cost. Now, there's also normally a renewal or application fee, but that's waived for the Filipino courtesy, the SRRV courtesy system. Now, you don't get that 1,500 back, but this is just held on deposit. You don't earn interest on it. Well, it'll minimal interest, but you're not entitled to it. It stays under the SRRV Philippine Retirement Authority scheme. Now, if your Filipina wife is under the age of 50, then rather than having to put in a security deposit of 1,500, you have to put in a security deposit of 3,000. Still not a huge amount of money, not compared to the other retirement visa deposit requirements of 3, 6, 15, 30, even 50,000 US dollars. But if your wife, the Filipino, or former Filipino, over the age of 50 plus, 1,500. Younger than 50, 3,000. The application fee is the same, no matter what. So it's a total cost of 4,500. But these applications for Filipino courtesy also include spouse and up to 2 dependents. So, guys, you're included with that in that cost as well. Now, the benefit of this type of situation and applying down this route, if you're in retirement in the Philippines, what happens if your Filipino wife dies before you? Well, she applies for this as the principal person. So she is the principal on the SRRV system. So SRRV, it's essentially Mrs. She's the Filipino, and then Mr. as the foreigner. And if she dies, you simply replace her as the principal at no extra cost. And you don't have to pay that again. That just stays there. Likewise, this also applies if you become legally separated or divorced. Now, if you get divorced, it may be if your wife is on the ball and particularly savvy, she might say, yeah, but this is held on deposit with the PRA in an approved bank, and I'm losing out on that because she needs to sign over the rights for you to become the principal holder of the SRRV. She's likely to do that if you say to her, okay, I'll give you half of that because that's half yours, half mine under the system. This doesn't apply if she's dead because you automatically become the principal. But if you were to be legally separated or divorced, you can say, okay, I'll give you half of that money, or even give her all of it and say, all right, you sign over the rights to that deposit. Because if you were to leave the Philippines and you were to leave the SRRV system and go and live in Thailand or Malaysia or something or other, after about 6 months, you can access this money and get this money back. So your ex-wife could actually say, well, you know, that was like a shared investment, really. So I should be entitled to half of that. So avoid all of that complication and pay her off and say, I'll give you half of that, or give you all of that, or that. So for the sake of simplicity, you're getting separated or divorced, I'll give you 3,000 as cash. And I'll give you that 3,000 as cash with the lawyer when you sign over so that you allow me to become the principal on SRRV. Again, no extra fees to the PRA or anything else like that. The reason I held off to today is because the SRRV courtesy scheme, when you renew this every year, you don't have to pay an annual fee. This is the cost of processing it. But every year thereafter, you have a cost ×2 of $50 per annum for you and the principal. So $50 for Mr. and for Mrs. It used to be $10. So it has changed as of the 1st of September. So it's going to cost you $100 a year to renew both of you under there. The principal, the former Filipino, and you and the spouse, and any dependents, up to 2 dependents. £100 a year. Used to be $100 a year. It used to be $20. It used to be $10 times 2. It's now $50 times 2. The reason I hung on for that is because the only thing that was confirmed prior to this was the extended courtesy, which is for civil servants, consulars, military people. And for them, the extended courtesy, if they can prove, don't have to prove any pension for former Filipinos under this scheme. But for the extended courtesy, if you can prove pension of at least $800 individual or jointly $1,000 per month as pension, lifetime provable pension guaranteed, I'll come on to that in a minute, then you have to pay in $3,000 as a security deposit. And if you can't prove pension, then you have to pay in $6,000 under the new regime. So you're either paying in $3,000 or $6,000. This is for you military guys that are doing it yourself, or with yourself and your children. $3,000 with pension, $6,000 without. But just purely for previous Filipinas, likewise, if she comes back to the Philippines with you under this scheme, and let's say, for example, she doesn't want to be restricted on any land. She wants to buy lots of land. So she wants to regain her Philippine citizenship. She can do that. And when she reclaims her Philippine citizenship, she drops off this. Again, she drops off of this SRRV, and you automatically replace her as the principal. Why might she want to do that? Well, she might want to buy land, which she's restricted to as a former Filipino coming back in unless she regains her Philippine citizenship. So you're covered on all of your bases with this, guys. Because if your relationship breaks down or you become divorced, you can become the principal. You might have to pay her off. If she regains her Philippine citizenship, again, you become the principal again. But in all of these life events, you don't have to pay any extra security deposits or anything like that. You simply have to pay, if you're both on it together, $100, which is $50 each per year to renew. Or if it's just you then, because she's got regained her citizenship or you've separated or divorced, you don't have to pay anything else. You're not paying these large deposit fees. You're only paying $50 per annum to renew, rather than with the extended courtesy, it's $100 each. For you ex-military guys on your own, it's $100 per annum now to renew, but that's extended courtesy. Courtesy, ex-Filipinos, it's only $50 each. Okay, so it is cheaper, and that was only confirmed and went live today. Before today, it was talk that the courtesy, extended courtesy, would go from $10 to $100. Well, that is the case for ex-military guys and consulate people, officials and personalities that are, contributing entrepreneurs, etc. That's gone from $10 to $100. But as again for Filipinos, as a nice little sweetener, it's gone from $10 to $50 rather than 10 to 100. So it was worthwhile me waiting just to get that confirmation today. So that is very, very important. I'll just wipe my board to confirm the other details. There we go. I've cleaned my board, the wonders of the edit. One thing I wanted to just briefly clarify was the fees for the book standard SRRV Classic. Because the way that that's been priced now is that if you are 50 years of age or older, then and you can prove pension of $800 per month for individual or $1,000 per month if it's a joint application, then you have to pay in and hold in a regulated account $15,000 US, plus your application fee of 1,500, etc. And the annual fee, I might as well put that down just for clarity. That's the processing fee, which you don't get back. This is held in an authorized account, 15,000 if you're over the age of 50. If you're and you can prove pension, that's with pension, without pension, Used to be 10, it's gone up to 15. Without pension, used to be 20, it's now gone up to 30,000. Bear with me, guys, because there's some things that you might not be aware of with regards to pension, so don't think you know everything. Now, that's just for people over the age of 50, with pension or without. Processing fee is the same, 1,500. What you're also able to do now under the SRRV sort of bulk standard classic is that if you're between the ages of 40 and 49 years of age, under the age of 50, with a pension, you can put in a security deposit of 25,000 US dollars. And all of these 15, 30, 25, etc. needs to be transferred from a foreign account into the Philippines. It can't be done from the Philippines, like within the Philippines, unless you can prove where that money originally came from. It originated from outside the Philippines. So this is bank transfers, telegraphic transfers from an overseas account into the authorized Philippine account. If you can prove pension, you are a pensioner, it's 25,000. And if it's without pension, it's 50,000. You might think, wow, that's a lot. Well, it is to be held on account, earning the square root of 0. However, you can use it to buy a condominium or a lease. Questionable whether you would want to do that or not, tying up money for that period of time. And you don't get the interest on it. And if you do buy a condo, then the PRA will put a lien against that property anyway. So you can't just buy it and flip it. So you are tied up. But it might be, what might be interesting for younger, like over the age of 40, digital nomads, etc. It might be that they're quite happy to hold that amount of money on deposit, stay a few years in the Philippines. It might be. I'm not saying it's ideal, but it is a solution. It's a very welcoming solution. How many countries do you know that have this type of welcoming retirement scheme, especially for people under the age of 50? So this is what it is. Now, you might be aware of these figures already. For renewing all of this every year, it's going to cost 360 US dollars per annum. Doesn't matter whether you're on that. It doesn't matter. It's $360 per annum. And that's what I pay because I'm on Classic. Because when I applied for it, I was over the age of 50, but I was too young for my pension to kick in. Now, you might be aware of all of those, and you can pay that in US dollars, or every day on the PRA Facebook page, they publish the exchange rate. It's not the Google rate. Don't argue about anything. That's the exchange rate, and it's pretty fair. That's the exchange rate for that day. When you're renewing it, on the day that you renew it, you'll find out what the exchange rate is. And if you're paying in peso, you multiply that by the exchange rate, and that's how much in peso you've got to pay that day. You can go to the bank and pay it in and get a receipt, go to the PRA office with your renewal application, job done. Or you can do it online. Now, that initially, under the old scheme, you could renew it times 3. So for 3 years. You didn't have to worry about when you renew, you have to pay the annual fee, the application form. They do fingerprinting now. When you do that, only the once, because they just want to make sure they've got fingerprints for everybody. But you've also got to submit, so that the people do age and people's faces do change. So every time you renew, you've got to submit two 2-inch by 2-inch photographs. Well, if you do it every year, you've got to get the photographs every year. You used to be able to renew it for 3 years, and then they dropped that to 2 years. And then recently, over the last couple of years, you've only been able to renew it annually. But as of quite recently, as I did last week, you can renew this for up to 2 years at a time, which is great. 2 lots of 360 with the exchange rate. You pay that, you submit your two by 2 photographs, job done. I'll see you again in 2 years' time. And in next year, 2026, they're hoping that this will go up to 3 years. So you've only got to renew it every 3 years, which means you only got to submit your photos and your application form once every 3 years, which is fantastic. 2 years is still great, so it's a step in the right direction. Thank you for bearing with me on this video. I'm sure you've been aware of the sort of speculation and then the sort of semi-official rates that have been published. But certainly on the Philippine Courtesy SRRV Visa for former Filipinos, that annual fee was not confirmed until this morning. It was never published anywhere, so it's only been confirmed this morning that the annual fee is only $50 each, rather than $100 as it is for the expanded courtesy. So that's important because it is a little saving. I hope that if you are thinking about coming to the Philippines to retire with your Filipino spouse and she's a citizen of another country, that you seriously consider being here on the SRRV courtesy. Because if anything happens to her or your relationship, you're covered. You've got a considerable amount of security. People on 13A visas, I know a lot of you guys maybe in your latter years and your spouses are considerably younger than you. Well, that might be the case, but one of my neighbours down the road that I know very well, he's American, he's married again. He's been in the Philippines since, well, it was before Mount Pinatubo went pop. He's been in the Philippines since about 1985 and he's ex-military. Now, his first Filipino wife suddenly died and he was alone for quite a few years, but he's remarried now. And he said to me before in a conversation that he was devastated and never thought for a million years. And his first Filipino wife, when he became a widower, was younger than him. So it can happen. And of course, if that happens, you're in a situation whereby you've lost your wife, and unless you do something about it, you're just a tourist. And you might have been in the Philippines for years. So it's really important that you do consider that. Finally, as a little bonus for bearing with me on this video, a lot of people talk about, well, I got pension, so I'm okay. Well, if you're British, let's say, and you want to apply under the SRRV Classic, you're over the age of 50, and with pension, you've got to put in 15,000 as a security deposit rather than 30,000. And that pension needs to be over $800 per annum. And it needs to be guaranteed lifetime pension. And this is where some of you guys fall foul of the terminology and the rules. I'll just wipe my board. There we go, nice clean board, wonders of the edit. Now, under the PRA, the Philippine Retirement Authority wording, pension is a big problem for a lot of guys because you need to submit proof of a guaranteed lifetime pension. Now, if you're familiar with pension mechanics, you will know, not like as in car mechanics, but the mechanics of how pensions work, you will know that there are fundamentally two types of pensions. There's defined benefit and defined contributions. Now, a lot of old style occupational company pension schemes were defined benefits. Similarly, say the UK state pension is defined benefits. And if you work, say, if you've got a military pension in the States, etc., that's defined benefits because you know what you're going to be paid. It's written in stone and you're going to get it until the day you die. Likewise, an annuity. If you use a lump sum to buy an annuity, so you're converting a lump sum into an income. Now, if you happen to be quite elderly and sick, you can get a good annuity because the annuity providers take a risk and think, oh, actually, hang on a minute, he smokes 40 a day, he's quite sick, and he's 70 years old. Well, chances are he ain't going to live that long. So they'll give you a higher amount every month because they don't think they're going to have to pay it out for very long. But if you're quite young in your 50s, and you've retired early, you want to enjoy the latter part of your life, you're fit and healthy, like me, for example, you're not going to get a good annuity. Because chances are you're going to live a relatively long time, all things being equal, you know, and actuaries look at life expectancies and they consider how long they might have to pay out this income for. So for a large lump sum capital outlay, I'd get a relatively small return. But that annuity would be guaranteed. Again, the PRA wording is lifetime guaranteed income. And annuities, defined benefit pensions, and state schemes are defined benefits. You know what you're going to get. So in the UK, for example, you know that you're going to get, if you've got full state pension, that's a little over £12,000 a year. Well, that's okay, guys, because under the But you have to be, if you're a male, for example, then you're going to be getting your UK basic state pension, or use the black, it seems to work better and show up better than the blue. You've got your UK basic state pension. Guys, no matter whatever country you're in, you might have a social security system, and you got this is applicable to the UK, but the UK basic state pension is roughly about £12,000 per annum, which is more than sufficient. But that's from the age of what, 65, and if you're like me and you're caught in the trap, you'll get it at age 67. Well, if you're retiring before then you forget that, because that can't be put into the equation, because you've got to be in receipt of these benefits to apply. You've got to be able to prove the pension. But if you happen to be going on to SRRV over the age of 65 or whatever it is for you, and you're receiving your UK basic state pension already, then you can prove that, and you can get in on the 15,000 lump sum, because you can prove pension, which is more than $800 per month. That works out as. So you're okay. That's great. If you can't prove pension, or you've got personal pension schemes like a lot of you guys have got, they don't count. Because if you look at the mechanics of, say, a SIP, a UK SIP, a self-invested personal pension, or a personal pension plan, a SIP is just basically like a container, yeah? Self-invested personal pension. And with that, you can do drawdown, which means you're in control of when you draw down money. And you might draw down money in year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the capital may start to deplete over time. So within say 20 years, you might not have anything left, because there's your pension pot gradually diminishing as you draw down money. That's why it's called drawdown. You draw down money over the years ahead. That's not guaranteed lifetime pension. If you took that lump sum, let's say it was 100,000, just out of example, let's say it was 100k sterling, and you took that out of the SIP and you say, right, I'm going to buy an annuity. And the annuity provider says, oh, okay, you're quite sick, you're like mid-50s, and your family's got a history of heart attacks and cancer and stuff, we'll give you 10,000 a year. They'll say, okay, we're going to give you 10,000 a year for life. You're hardly going to get that from them, but this is just an example. They're going to get you 10k per annum. Well, that can be counted because it's a guaranteed annuity. So it's going to be paid for life. It's lifetime income. So the PRA will take that into consideration. They won't take personal pensions into consideration because it's not guaranteed, is it? Because personal pensions, which are defined contributions, not defined benefits, it's just a pot. That's all it is, with your money inside. And you know this, guys, because you can invest it in various funds. And that fund has a value. And that value can shrink as well as grow, depending on the underlying performance of the funds, whatever you hold in. And you might draw money out of it each year, and you might draw out 6% as income, and it might be growing by 10%. Well, great, because you're drawing out less than what's in the pot, so it will gradually grow. You're taking out 6, but it's growing by 10. So the growth is covering your withdrawals. But what happens if you take out 6% and it loses 10%? Well, you're taking out 6, but your pension fund is shrinking. It's not guaranteed. So that's why you've got to be very, very careful when you think, oh, I got a pension of, 20,000 a year. Well, have you? Have you got 20,000? You might have £20,000 a year pension now, but how's it made up? And is it guaranteed? Is it defined contributions like military pensions, like superannuation schemes, teachers' pensions, civil service pensions, basic state pension? That's guaranteed, defined benefits. It's not defined contributions. So I hope you guys find that interesting, because a lot of pensions aren't guaranteed, and therefore the PRA ain't stupid. The PRA will tell you whether or not your pension scheme is acceptable or not. And I'm only saying this not to lecture you, but just to inform you, because forewarned is forearmed. Don't be surprised if they decline your pension as real pension, because it isn't technically guaranteed lifetime pension. I know it's not, they know it's not, and you can argue till the cows come home, but you'd be wrong if you think it is and it's not. So I hope you find that interesting, because it's definitely worth clarifying that. Right, I've covered the former Filipino SRRV Courtesy Visa and why it's really, really a good idea for married spouses to retire in the Philippines on that. Because then, God forbid, if anything happens to your spouse or your relationship breaks down, you can continue to enjoy retirement in here without dealing with the huge figures and starting again on SRRV and putting in 15, 30, or in some cases 50,000 US dollar deposits. And of course then paying, rather than paying $50 a year to renew it, times by 2 or 3 years, if you can do it every 2 or 3 years, you're paying $360 each year to renew it. So there's savings all the way around. So don't do the knee-jerk reaction if you're married and you're coming over here and your spouse did previously relinquish your Philippine citizenship. Don't come over here and immediately go on 13A, because that's a real big mistake. You're missing out on a good one. You're missing out on an absolutely fantastic deal, guys. I hope you found this video interesting. It's certainly very thought-provoking, and I really do hope that it's made some of you guys stop and think about what is the best way forward coming to the Philippines in retirement if your Filipino spouse has got citizenship elsewhere, because you're missing a trick if you don't go on to SRRV Courtesy. You really are. Certainly when it comes to your own long-term security in the Philippines, should anything, God forbid, happen. I hope you found this video of interest. Please like and subscribe and watch some of my other videos, and do comment if you've got any other suggestions on content that you'd like me to perhaps comment on. We don't know everything, but certainly in the comments of some of my other videos, it's been really inspiring how people can talk and help and communicate with other people. It's really turning into a bit of a community. I don't care how many subscribers I've got or how many watch hours I've got. At the end of the day, I can see already that from the comments, people are really trying to help other people out and asking really logical and prudent questions, which is fantastic, because I want everybody not to make mistakes, because we're all in it. As I keep on saying, we are unique, but we've got very similar traits as expats. So thank you very much for bearing with me. Until next time, enjoy.